Good to go. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ian Coyle, and I'm the County Administrator in Livingston County. And you are watching a YouTube live from Livingston County government at the Emergency Operations Center here in Groveland. And today we're going to go through the business impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and also some general updates on a reopening, and we're going to answer some of your questions. I'm joined this morning by the Chamber of Commerce President, Laura Lane. Laura, if you want to introduce yourself and let the audience know who you are, where you come from, what your role is.
Sure. So as Ian said, I'm Laura Lane. I'm the president of the Livingston County Chamber of Commerce. And we have been spending the past, what has it been now, 6 weeks, almost 7 weeks, focused, I would say, primarily on our COVID-19 response to the business community. And as a Chamber of Commerce, we are always about connections. And those connections are vitally important right now in connecting the business community to initially to all of the information that was coming at them, and then also fielding that information and passing now at this stage that information along to the parties that be so that we can help enable a safe reopening of Livingston County businesses.
And Laura also participates as a board member on the county IDA.
Correct.
And the Livingston County Development Corporation. So those are the county entities that are involved in promotion of industry, retention of businesses, any sort of incentive-based programs that we can participate in that we offer. So Laura has kind of that dual hat. I also sit on the board as the Livingston County Board of Supervisors representative on the Chamber Board. So we have a lot of cross connections. Also, the Chamber is responsible for being the tourism promotion agency. So tourism, which we're going to talk about. We got some questions. Before we get to the questions, and we got a few, so just to let everybody know about the format here today, the questions were sent in advance to the county's email address, info@, and we got quite a few questions. And we tried to group them as best we could because some were kind of very niche and specific. Those that were very niche and specific, we are going to have either myself or some of the county staff respond to those people. But otherwise, those questions that are generic enough and also some very specific ones we will get to today. But before we do, just an overview of the reopening itself. There's a lot of talk about reopening. So the governor, so let's just kind of take a step back as far as where we are. We've had various intervals of executive orders that have been issued by the governor as the chief executive of the state, and that everybody at the county level on down is responsible to adhere to be responsible citizens and sort of follow the laws and executive orders that are in place in this time of crisis. So some of those people do not agree with, and we hear both from businesses and government and everybody in between of the dislike or the like. And there's an understanding and appreciation that it was done for the purposes of controlling the spread and flattening the curve for the purposes of hospitalizations mainly. So we didn't want to overwhelm the hospital system. So all these moves were made. Whether we like them or not, they were made. And the executive order on New York pause, New York taking a pause and opening up at some point in time in the future, is a New York State generated measure. We are following it, and it is through right now the 15th of May. So there's lots of talk about what happens after the 15th of May. And the governor has said that it will be a region by region reopening. We're grouped with the Finger Lakes region. Former Lieutenant Governor, current Rochester Chamber of Commerce President Bob Duffy is the lead, the gatekeeper of ideas and plan submissions from all the counties to end up working with the regional council and the governor's office to eventually reopen the Finger Lakes region when it's time, under a set of guidelines and principles that all counties will end up following and partnering with the state on. What those look like were discussed yesterday. You basically got a decline in hospitalizations, a decline in deaths, a rate count or a trend line of new hospitalizations per 100,000 residents on a rolling average, a share of total beds available. How's your hospital capacity? How's your ICU bed capacity? Tests per month and contact tracers per 100,000 population. The Finger Lakes region was noted as meeting 5 of those 7 standards. We were a little short in the region on testing and tracing. So tracing, Livingston County, I can tell you, needs 19 contact tracing full-time equivalents. We have that set in motion, but some other counties don't. So the collective county region needs to get a little bit better on tracing. And then testing, we certainly don't have the swabs done per month that they would like to see in the county. So we need, again, assistance with the state, more testing capacity, more swab kits to jack that number up. But both of those are certainly possible and plausible to get done in time for the plan for the Finger Lakes region to commence with phase 1 on May 15th or 16th. So we will talk a little bit about what that looks like and what that means when we go through some of these questions. So with that, if you're just joining us a little late, my name is Ian Coyle. I'm the county administrator. This is Laura Lane. She's the president of the Livingston County Area Chamber of Commerce. And we're here to talk about business, and we're here to talk about reopening plans and in the region and specific to Livingston County. So we've got a question from, it looks like Kimberly, and Kimberly's asking about non-essential businesses and what steps or process they would need to take in order to reopen. Questions like, are there permits or any paperwork that would need to be filed, a business plan, who would that go to? And then she talks a little bit about the phases. So I'll talk about the phases, but Laura, would you talk a little bit about what might be expected of a business when we talk about these phased reopenings?
Sure. So we have been participating in calls with the former Lieutenant Governor Bob Duffy in his role as an advisor to the governor in the reopening, and participated in a call with him last week, as well as other chambers of commerce throughout the region. We've also been on calls with other local elected officials in our region, outlining how businesses can get back open when the pause is lifted. And as we look at it right now, the recommendations that are being given is that, and again, this is as of today, where we are now, as we are seeing with all of this, things are changing hourly and daily. So please just bear that in mind. As we are being informed, there will be guidelines and safety standards that businesses should adhere to, as outlined by CDC for safe work environments. Furthermore, at this time, we are being advised that there are 4 items that businesses should be working on right now in developing their own internal operations plans specific to their own business. And those 4 items are face masks and appropriate personal protective equipment, your plans around hand sanitizing availability for employees and customers, your internal business's social distancing plans, as well as your business's facility disinfecting protocols. And having those in place are critical to what you can be doing now as a business to prepare for reopening when that reopening may be based on the phases specific to your business. We are also working with other local elected officials, Senator Borrello's office, as well as Senator Gallivan's office, and our chamber colleagues and elected officials across the region to work on best practices so as to enable businesses to have a framework, something that they can build off of, as opposed to starting from scratch on how they develop their own internal business reopening plans.
Excellent. And the questions on phases and plans. So going back to the phases real quick, because this was a thread throughout many of the questions. We expect, so let's assume, and I know what assume means, but let's assume that the region will be, the Finger Lakes region, which we are part of in Livingston County, will be one of the regions that the state deems ready, that we've met all the check boxes we can check off on those 7 categories by the time the 15th rolls around. So 15th is a Friday. So let's say, okay, 16th we're live with what they would call phase 1. In the plan that's going to be compiled in the Finger Lakes region, from what we have seen from other regions and what Livingston County will in fact submit today or tomorrow for our ideas on a phase reopening, that 16th will hit a phase 1. That'll be a time of probably 15 to probably 2 to 3 weeks, right, of first phase 1. So let's call it 15 days. From that 16th to the end of the May, certain operations, certain businesses will be approved to open back up, or will be deemed essential and they weren't essential before. They've already signaled that manufacturing will be part of that, more manufacturing that's already allowed right now. They've already signaled, they being the state, that construction will be part of that. They've already signaled that, and we've already approved at the county level, elective surgeries for those that had to press pause on that, Noyes Hospital being one, certain outpatient work. We assume that other medical related activities, dentistry, dentists, things like that, that right now can do emergency only, we anticipate that those could be part of phase one. Beyond golf courses, maybe some flexibility with golf courses, certainly campgrounds, some flexibility with that, and we've got a question on that, which I'll answer later. Those would probably be a phase one. Again, if your business is not listed in that, I understand, I empathize, but we are just at the table making recommendations. We don't necessarily make the final call in Livingston County what businesses will be in phase 1, 2, 3, or 4. So the next phase would be only started if you continue to meet those benchmarks. There's always a regular 2-week interval where there's checks on the community health. Is the trend line going exponentially up? Then your phase 2 will not commence on the date that it was forecasted to commence. Is your trend line staying the same or down? That's good. You need to meet all those standards again. Okay, let's turn the economy back on a little bit more. And again, I'm not passing the buck here, but this is a responsibility area under the home rule statutes of New York State as a whole, and not Livingston County. If we had our druthers, we might say this goes in phase 1, not 2. Schools should reopen here, not then. We don't have that power. That power and responsibility rests with the state and those decisions. But we are definitely putting the interest of business forward as we submit our ideas. So that's a good question from Kimberly. I hope that we answered it. The next question comes from, Mark. And Mark wants to know about the Hemlock Fair. Mark is asking, will there be a Hemlock Fair? When will the decision be made? And what about just requirements and directives on events or activities that have mass gatherings? I've got some thoughts, but Laura, did you want to comment a little bit on that?
Yeah, so we had seen another question that came through kind of similar to this as it relates to summer festivals. And we have seen cancellations of some summer festivals already. And based on the decisions and directives that come down from the governor's office based on large gatherings, we may see more. We have not seen the Hemlock Fair canceled yet. We are in, as I imagine lots of other folks are, that wait and see mode, where decisions cannot be made. But ultimately, those decisions lie in the hands of the directive passed down from the governor, and then within each of the individual festivals and the organizations that put those festivals on, and understanding that they also have internal capacities that they're dealing with in making those decisions. And they don't come by those decisions lightly. They put a lot of thought into those. And while we would all love those opportunities to be gathering, mass gatherings are the area that they're expressing most concerns on. So again, we will wait and see if the Hemlock Fair will continue it. And again, as I said, that decision lies between the governor's office and the directives passed down a lot large gatherings and what the Hemlock Fair board ultimately decides.
Yeah, and I think that goes to the phase reopening. In the draft plans we have seen of other regions of the state, so not specific to the Finger Lakes, but areas that are a lot like the Finger Lakes. So Hudson Valley, Mohawk Valley, Central New York, the events, festivals, fairs, special events that are bound to have a lot of folks that come in from out of town or have a lot of density, have a lot of people in a small amount of space. Those are usually on the end of the phases of the plans. They're usually at the end phases of each of the plans. So you're probably talking phase 3 or phase 4. So what does that mean time-wise? If phase 1 is going to go from mid-May to end of May, phase 2 would go from start of June to middle of June. Phase 3 would go from middle of June to end of June. So you're into end of phase 3 and phase 4, you're well into July. And again, that's not a guarantee that if your festival is in August, as the state fair is in August, and the governor has already signaled that that may not take place, at least in its current or everyday construct of years past. So again, there's going to be a theme. I hope that a theme doesn't present here for you that we are non-answering answers here. We are doing our best to try to give you straight shots as far as where we see things going. So it may not be the answer that you want to hear. I do appreciate that and understand that you would be concerned about that completely. But in turn, what we're trying to do is give you answers as best we know them. And so the best case scenario for this region, of which Livingston County is a part of the Finger Lakes region, is that we are able to open up in phases on the 15th of May, that each successive phase is able to be opened or turned back on when we expect it and forecast it to be turned back on. And we don't have any, what you would say, regression or trends upward that would indicate that there's a problem or a persistence of an issue or a growth of a cluster or more hospitalizations or more ICU beds used. So at this point in time, that's what we can say about the Hemlock Fair. That is in July of every year. I would say as far as it being in July, if my gut would be, it doesn't look likely that it would be held in the construct that it's used to being held, as far as the density that they expect and the population that they serve, as far as the patrons of that. But time will tell on that. I guess I missed a question from Jennifer. Jennifer was wondering about masks. Laura talked a little bit about this, but will masks be required for all businesses after the 15th? Laura, can you talk a little about mask wearing and where we think that's going to go?
Yeah, so from our understanding as it relates to masks, the executive order is stating that all businesses have a responsibility to utilize masks, especially within the workplace, as well as with forward-facing consumer interactions, and the need for that. The masks are designed to be utilized when social distancing, being able to stay 6 feet apart, cannot be realized. So as businesses are looking at their internal reopening plans, the two elements of face masks and social distancing are going to play hand in hand. So you need to be looking at internally within your business environment for your employees, when you cannot create social distancing, that 6 feet apart, that face masks are required. Furthermore, as you're looking at the interfacing with your customers and your customers being near each other, that is also a critical component of your within your business, of creating the guidelines that say you need to be social distanced, and if that cannot be accomplished, you need to be wearing a mask. How long will this go on? Again, that's an unknown. Currently, it is for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
And so with that, we just have to continue to watch what comes at us within the Finger Lakes region and from the governor's office as to the requirements for face masks and your responsibility for your employees, as well as creating that atmosphere also of safety within your business is critically important as we look at the reopening of our economy. It's one thing to say that the doors are open. It's another thing to say it's a safe environment. You're welcome to come out. We want to do business with you. And so as a business owner, your willingness to participate and encourage face mask wearing and to publicize your safety protocols is going to also be another critical component of helping to continue to advance your business economically through the transition in this new norm.
Yeah, that's a great point about businesses. So businesses have had a wallop of an economic impact. We understand and appreciate that what you're going through, and we empathize with you, we sympathize that people have had to lay people off, businesses had to close, and that's a big hurt for us as a small county. It's a big hit for the Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, that's the membership of the Chamber of Commerce, is that kind of the backbone of that small business. So what businesses have been asked to do already is to bear a brunt of this new normal that we're operating under, and we understand that. So the second step is another ask of business. So I'm gonna couch that by saying we realize, or I realize personally from my gut, that it's another ask of business. But the ask is all of those things to be done upon reopening, because if they're not done upon reopening, again, we run the risk of regression and a step backwards. And what we don't want from a mindset perspective, we don't want from an economic perspective, governmental, business, everything, is to take one step up and two steps back. we want to be, so for example, if you're deemed to be in phase, your business is by the state authorized to open up with fairly limited restrictions, but restrictions nonetheless in phase 1 or 2. And then the people that are your patrons, your customers, kind of descend upon your business. You just need to be, responsible, I guess you could say, for adhering to all these new standards. So you see the taped off lines, you see the masks, you see the sanitizer, you see if we open up, we're going to have these new normal, these new standards. That is to be not only encouraged, but basically warranted and almost prescribed for each of those businesses. So good question. Thank you. Next question comes from David, and he asked about the restaurants. In what order of the phases to reopen do you see restaurants reopening, and what would be the timeline for that to happen? I've got some thoughts, but Laura, what do you think about restaurants?
Yeah, so obviously we can share that restaurants, there are currently restaurants in Livingston County that are operating with takeout. The chamber has compiled a list of all restaurants, their phone numbers. We're going to try to make it as easy as possible for you to pick up the phone, call those restaurants, and get your takeout. But as far as when they'll be opened for table seating and at what capacity is still yet to be determined. We've seen various phases where they're included in phase 2 or phase 3. And within those phases, the capacities with which they will be able to operate, we have seen vary from at 25% capacity up to 75% capacity as we continue to phase in. And obviously, as restaurants are looking at their capacities versus their operations model and what they can sustain at what levels. So again, you may see a new norm. And again, I'd ask the consumers to bear with the patience and be patient with restaurants, again, as they phase their openings. Nothing is going to be a flip the switch and it was what it was 7 weeks ago. It will never be like that again. And please be patient as restaurants navigate their new roles in being open and what that looks like in their environment.
Yep. And I think as far as restaurants, to the exact question, I think Laura put it best as far as the ratcheting up. The restaurants were linked up with other businesses that were ratcheted downward when we started the New York on pause, what's essential, what's not essential, what gets closed, what's allowed to open. Whether you agree with it or disagree with it, that's how it went. So we do forecast it to go, as it went down, to go back up. I don't think the proverbial switch is going to get flipped and we're going to have restaurants back 100% online with 100% occupancy. My guess is going to be in phase, I would say maybe phase 2, possibly phase 1, hopefully phase 2. You've got restaurant activity at a percentage of what they used to be in terms of occupancy. So the ability to sit down in a restaurant, that restaurant, mind you, now has a bunch of new protocols they're going to have to adhere to, a bunch of new guidelines that they're all going to get together and say, we will pledge to be operating in this new normal with these following guidelines. And their occupancy might have been 100 before. It might be now ability to seat 25 or 50, or then eventually 75, and then eventually 100%. That's what I see personally the state coming in with for restaurant reopening. So very good question. Again, to reinforce what Laura said, restaurants are open right now. Takeout business, please patronize those establishments. They are always there for you when you need a donation for the Little League or the 5K or for some special event or festival. So now they need you more so than ever. So please, again, go to those places and patronize them. Had another question on sort of the back to work. And this question comes from Keith. And that is, for a region to go back to work or to open up or to reopen, we talked about the criteria. And the question was specific to the testing and the tracing or tracking. And that is, who's really responsible for getting those criteria on track, both physically and financially? And I can answer that one. So basically, again, back to this, where do the regions currently stand? Hospitalizations, ICU beds, deaths, cases, residents tested. So who's responsible for that? That, in both cases, those are a partnership. The partnership exists between the state and the county, and actually the hospital system as well. So for us, we're lucky in that we have Noise Health to be able to partner with us when we say, hey, Noise, we just received a batch of test kits that we ordered 5 weeks ago, and now they came in, there's a 500 or 1,000. Can you run another round of curbside testing, or can you jack that up, or can you test essential workers, things like that. So it's definitely going to be a partnership. But again, we're also grouped with the region. I said before when we opened up, we do meet the contact tracing requirement as an individual county. But in the region, collectively as a whole, Monroe County needs something like, I guess they would need around 210 tracers. I don't know if they have 210 tracers. We in our county need 19 for our 65,000 people. I know that we can meet that. We do meet that. But again, all counties grouped as a whole, that runs up to a final number. I think it's 420, 430. We need to meet that. We don't yet meet that. I think we were at 361 at last count. So it's a partnership. It's the counties working together. Now Bloomberg Philanthropies is coming in. The state of New York's coming in. There's probably going to be some funding for this, tracing army that they talk about. But we ourselves individually as counties, those that don't have that tracing requirement met, need to jack that up. And same thing with the testing. The testing more so is the partnership, but we are definitely restricted, beholden to whatever you want to call it, the PPE and the supply chain and what we can get or not get out of the State Emergency Management Office. So we're very much appreciative of everything we've gotten to date. But in this county, for our population, we do need more. We have encouraged people to use the greater Rochester region. They just opened up essential workers asymptomatic testing at MCC. I encourage you to look that up. You can go online, find out information about that on our county website. So as we get those testing and tracing numbers up as a region, we will be okay. So the responsibility area falls both with the county and the state in trying to get that going. And I appreciate Keith. I think I know who Keith is. And I'm going to then share Keith's submitted quote for the day for the audience. And that is, challenges are what make life interesting, and overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. Joshua J. Marine. Keep up the good work, be safe and well. So we appreciate Keith's question. I appreciate the quote. I think it's very powerful and very timely for what we've got going on this week and this month and what lies ahead. So thank you, Keith, for that question and quote. Again, my name is Ian Coyle, County Administrator of Livingston County. I'm here with Laura Lane, Chamber of Commerce President, and we are talking about your questions on reopening and essential businesses. So another question comes from Vonda, and Vonda asks about communication, guidance, news, information sharing. How is that relayed? How is that conveyed? And how will that change, if at all, moving forward? Could you talk a little bit about from your perspective, Laura?
Sure. From the Chamber perspective, as I had mentioned when we first came on, the Chamber is about making connections. We always have been, we always will be. It's amplified during this situation. So as we are at this phase looking at things, we are taking in information. The Chamber has launched a survey. We've had a great response to that as far as what were the COVID-19 impacts on businesses leading up to about 4 weeks into the pandemic. And then looking forward, what are businesses' areas of concern as they're looking to reopen? And those specific open-ended questions provide valuable feedback as the region looks to reopen. Beyond the 7 criteria that will be across the board, there are industry-specific concerns and questions that keep coming up, and we will convey those. We will share those with Bob Duffy's office. We've shared them already with the county, and we'll continue to share those with elected officials that have the ability to convey those to the governor's office. We will continue to collect those. We are currently hosting industry-specific Zoom meetings. So they're open to business owners to join on to communicate, collaborate with your colleagues within the manufacturing industry, the tourism industry, the restaurant industry. We've hosted one already with the wedding industry. It's a Q&A. It's a here's what we've seen, here's what we've tried, here's what worked, here's what hasn't worked. And from those meetings, again, gathering the questions and concerns. We are not the decision makers in this process. Again, we are the connectors. We will connect your questions to the powers that be to help get you answers for those.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That's a great answer, Laura, and it's really representative of what the Chamber brings to the table for the businesses. So I know we appreciate that at the county. I know businesses do as well. The information exchange moving forward on the issue as a whole from the counties is, county perspective, is our website. I mean, very simply, livingstoncounty.us, look for the COVID nasty looking virus thing and just click on that, and it takes you to resources in the news. We probably are putting out, between social media and traditional press release media, 3 to 5 blasts per day out of our office to try to keep the public informed. That could be, hey, there's new testing here, hey, there's new cases here, mental health resources, and then of course we still have a county to run, so it's all the other things that we've got going on. The census is going on. I'm going to make a plug for the census right now, that we are sitting in 3rd place in the region, a little bit behind a county that shall remain nameless, and another county that shall remain nameless, but we need to overtake minimally to get into 2nd place and then in 1st place moving forward. And all kidding aside, the census is to tabulate the population of an area. The population of an area predicates sometimes how much funding you get is predicated on what your population is. So very much so, it's important anyways. It's always important. It's definitely important now in relation to the funding streams that are possible with COVID-19 and the stuff that the departmental operations on the county side that we run and we fund with monies that we receive. We're funding and operating some of these departments that are responsible actors and actions and operations to the actual COVID-19 crisis. So wanted to bring that up. Next question comes on courts. I guess I can handle that one. When will town and county courts reopen? About paperwork, evictions, tickets, court actions. We got a couple questions on family court. We know that there's been a lot of talk on courts lately, from talking with the county attorney and the district attorney and the public defender. We anticipate, we know the courts are on a pause through the end of the month through the Office of Court Administration. So we expect, again, I don't make that decision. If I did, I would let you know what it is and what it was or when it will happen. But the courts will make that decision. It looks likely that it will not happen until after the 1st of June. But they are doing some e-filing stuff. They're doing some back-end stuff. Otherwise, they'll have a tremendous backlog if they don't keep up a little bit with that. Next question comes on campgrounds. I can also answer that one. We have gotten quite a few complaints and concerns about campgrounds in general. So let me talk about, we've got state campgrounds across the state, and we've got private campgrounds. State campgrounds were closed through the 15th of May, following the New York pause. Private campgrounds were, unfortunately, and nothing against the state here, but they were falling in this category of, are they essential or are they not essential? We did ask our local region on the essential status of private campgrounds. We were told they were not essential. So when treating things as not essential, we felt that there was a need for a local health order that said, you shall not open until the 15th, like the state campgrounds, but for a few select exceptions or exemptions. That in turn was, we did convey that to the state. The state offered the, I don't want to call it compromise, but offered a suggestion about could counties work with the campground owners of New York Association that represents most, if not all, the campgrounds in the state, certainly in the county, on a set of operating principles and guidelines, and could that be met with some restrictions on reopening on an earlier than the 15th. We do have that in hand now. We just got that from the campground owners, and our Board of Supervisors in Livingston County, who has closed the campgrounds through the 15th, is actively considering, now that we've got the guidelines, revised protocols from public health, our own public health department, and we should make a decision with that in the next, I'd say, 24 hours on whether or not that will be lifted or whether it will stay to the 15th. On campgrounds in general, Erie County did a similar action to us, Clinton County, Oneida County, Livingston County. Other counties, yes, Wyoming, Allegheny, and others did allow them to open up, I guess, on time or when they would want to open up, subject to different restrictions. So I think campgrounds, though, will be like another business. Any other business will have a different operating environment than they're used to operating under if they are given authorization to open up. So long as, again, back to businesses, we don't want to jeopardize health and safety. If businesses like campgrounds can adhere to those standards commit to them, pledge to them, enforce them, have them be constant and unwavering, we will likely have a mutual partnership there on a reopening. If those, and a continued, track for the rest of the summer across the state. So good questions. They came, a couple of them came. What do we got next here, Laura? We've got a question on gatherings. Let's talk about gatherings. So Kim had asked, when the pause lifted, will there be any restrictions on the loosening of, will there be any loosening of restrictions on gatherings in general? No more than X, whatever. I have some thoughts on this as well, but Laura, did you want to chat a little bit about that one?
I would say that, and again, not to sound like a broken record, and I apologize, as Ian stated earlier, we'd love to give concrete answers, firm answers, but everything is still developing, and the concept around large gatherings is the area that I think we will have to wait the longest to see what the rulings on that will be and what the ability for that will be. And in the foreseeable future, we would not see large gatherings, and what that looks like on the other side when we can reopen to large gatherings. There's folks with more details on the science behind that than myself that will be making those decisions, and we will have to adhere to those decisions that come forward.
Yeah, I think on the gatherings, for those who just joined us too, we should recap this. Reader's Digest version of the reopening plan. The reopening plan will be something that takes into account feedback, plan submission criteria, requirements, suggestions, wants and needs, where we think certain places should be in phase 1, 2, 3, and 4, from Livingston County up through to the Finger Lakes region, coordinated by Bob Duffy, and they in turn will create a regional plan. We need to meet 7 standards, which we currently meet 5. We need to continue to meet them through every phase. So phase 2, we need to still meet all of those 7 phases moving to enter in and open up phase 2. All the phases will have elements within them that govern what businesses can operate, and if they can operate at a certain capacity or a density level. And gatherings will likely be discussed in one of those phases, not just discussed, will be referenced in one of those phases, and will likely say gatherings of a size of X will be encouraged, will be allowed, and then gatherings of a size of a higher amount down the road will be, again, allowed. That's what we anticipate happening for the issue of gatherings. It's a very good question, and we thank you for asking it. Back to, let's see, I know we covered a lot of these, and again, if I'm not asking your specific question, I should probably recap that too. A lot of people asked very similar questions, so we tried to coordinate them. So, for example, we got questions on summer festivals. I think we answered that when we talked about the Hemlock Fair. But what about agriculture? That's our #1 industry. Stan asked about how the dairy farms are doing, and what could I as a resident do to help support local farmers? Laura, did you want to tackle that one?
Sure, I can touch on that just briefly. I can share with you that the dairy and crop farmers of Livingston County are continuing to farm. Milking doesn't stop during a pandemic, and crops still need to get in the ground. They are continuing to operate, although they are also facing impacts of their distribution channels and end users. But that being said, the resiliency of our farmers is quite impressive. I received a call a couple weeks ago from a local dairy farmer who had seen the information on the food link distributions going on in Livingston County, and she wanted to make sure that dairy was included. Could milk be provided? Could cheese be provided? We put her in touch with folks at the county, and sure enough, it was included, and it was included outside of Livingston County as well. So, that's just one of those examples of the great things that are happening. In times of crises, people come together, and it's an example of how our farmers, they care greatly about their crops, their land, their animals, but they also care a great deal about their community, and they're showing that support.
Yeah, great. And there was some great positive press about that. And we thank Lawnell Farms, the Dairy Farm of America, and Dairy Farmers of America, DFA, and Noblehurst, and I'm missing one.
Was Milliganson on that?
Yeah, potentially, yeah. Okay. So if you were in on that, you know who you are.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
One of the other things on dairy in particular, but also in agriculture as an industry, is there's an end user for the agricultural product that is planted that has crops here that ends up being processed and then distributed. And that is oftentimes restaurants, end users, schools, in the supply chain. Think about gas for the ethanol plant, for some of the corn that's grown here. So all of those have different end users in the supply chain. If those are impacted, the first phase of that supply chain is impacted. And you saw some of the horror stories, if you will, on the milk, or dumping in the milk, whatever. So New York has now created a Nourish New York program to try to capture what otherwise would be waste or things that just can't go to market, products that can't go to market. How do we keep them in the chain, maybe more locally as opposed to internationally, where some of these products end up going? How do we keep them locally? How do we keep them in the state? How do we keep them to address some of the food security issues that are presenting when you have 20+% unemployment? So that's something that is on our radar, and we thank the agricultural industry for stepping up in that regard. Let's see here. So golfing. Jerry wants to know, can I go golfing now? And if it's a Jerry I know, he needs as much golfing as he can get, time on the range and what have you. But can I go golfing now? I can speak a little bit to this, and Laura, I know, is in touch with a lot of the golf course owners. Basically, I mean, golf courses are open. You can golf right now. Yes, the answer is yes, you can go golfing. Some odd restrictions on the operators of the golf courses that hopefully can be lifted here as part of a phase one. The carts are in some parts of the state apparently being operated in Livingston County. They're not. Finger Lakes, they're not. They're told not to. I think that would be a softening or relaxing in phase one post May 15th. That is a possibility, not a guarantee, but a possibility. Carts, either single occupant carts or family occupant carts. Got a question from a golf owner. What's the difference if you drive to the course in the same car together and you can't go in the cart together? I do understand that, but certainly restrictions maybe on inside operations of golf courses could potentially be part of the mix. Again, if we were to make that decision, I would tell you exactly what it is. I don't make it, so I can't. So I'm trying to do the best I can to relay what's out there. But anything else on golf courses?
I would just concur exactly what you've said.
Okay. Yeah, so basically you can go now. I encourage you to work on your game there, Jerry. But after that, you have to walk right now, and hopefully down the line you'll be able to shortly use a golf cart. Let's see. What will the regional plan include from Carl? I think we kind of talked about this. Restaurant. Oh, how about Laura, about Ralph and a guy by the name of Fletch. So Fletch lives. Can people travel here if they own or rent vacation homes on the lake? And when can Airbnbs open? So we had some questions on the Airbnb, the vacation rental area.
So as we've been informed, there is the ability to travel to those lake houses, to your lake house. We would ask that when traveling, same with Airbnbs, as you're able to travel to the Airbnbs that are open and online, we would just ask that you would adhere to the same guidelines that you would adhere to back at your home. If you're home as a state, or if you're coming in from another state, recognizing that in New York, we do have social distancing and face mask requirements when social distancing cannot be achieved. But do come back to those lake houses and again practice those safe social measures as you come back to this area.
Yeah, I think that you see a theme here, and that is the responsibility of citizens, everyday resident, responsibility of business, responsibility of government. And that is to be responsible citizens, a responsible government, and a responsible business owner. And in this new normal, it is a pain in the rear end. We completely understand. It's a pain in the rear end for everybody. The hardest decision we had to make as a county, probably in this whole entire thing, was adherence to a state guideline that said we had to close visitation to our nursing home. So not having any residents be able to see the loved ones, I said almost every single talk we've made here, hard decisions. There's a word for it, and I can't say it here with it because we don't have the bleeper thing working out here right now. But I understand what they are. They are what they are. We have to, though, kind of soldier on here, and it's a day by day. We're not going to sing, but it's a day by day, kind of one day at a time. Keep your head up. Stay optimistic. We're going to get through this. We're going to try to be better off for getting through it. We'll come better on the other side. We'll have a rebound. It'll be a step up. It'll be a bounce up. And we will only do that if we have everybody kind of working together with the same goal in mind. And that is give back this economy, give back business, give back this region, but get it back safely and incrementally and gradually. So a couple of questions. We have a couple of minutes left, so we're going to wrap up with a couple more questions. One, somebody said, great question, Fran, is it too soon to think about reopening? Will we slip back into a crisis?
That's a big question. That's a big question. I don't think it's been too soon to think about reopening. I think from a business perspective, they've been thinking about reopening day one that they were closed. And when will they be able to reopen? What does this new norm look like? Will we reinfect? Again, that's a very big unknown and a very big question. But it can be mitigated by safe practices and safe procedures, following in your business, following CDC guidelines to keep that business operation safe, keeping your employees socially distanced, wearing their masks, interfacing with your customer base. Again, that responsibility to keep the opening phases safe and to enable the continuation of the phased openings will hopefully help to mitigate that reinfection.
Yep. And I think, again, it boils down to everybody doing their part. So accepting, just sucking it up. It's not going to be the best case scenario. You might have thought your business should be in phase 1 or 2 and instead are in 3 or 4, or in 2 and you should have thought you were in 1. I understand that. I know that will be part of the equation here. We've already gotten lots of complaints about that. I think I'm going to be here, but I know I'm probably. So what I ask of everybody is adherence to standards will be so critical in the reopening here because we do not want to regress. The question Fran asks is critically important, and that is if we open up, we cannot be in a situation where in a couple weeks' time we didn't do things collectively as a group and collectively as a region, and therefore we are taking a step back from kind of a psyche perspective. It's not going to be the best look. It's not going to be the best reaction to the community as far as experiencing that. So let's do everything we physically can in our power to not let that happen and to open up gradually in the phases and work together as a community to do that. Carrie asked, where's the best place to get the latest information on reopening? I would say the Livingston County website, media, our partner organizations in the media will be putting out all of our releases, our website, social media, Twitter. On the business side of things, Laura, the Chamber of Commerce website likewise has any information that's available on small business administration, loans, activity, programs, grants, teleconferences and seminars on how to get things back going. Anything else on that?
I would just piggyback on that. So there was a question about the SBA funding, and will there be a round 3 of the SBA programs, which is yet to be determined. There are talks, obviously, in Washington around the continued need for businesses to access funding. That being said, we do know that via round 2, there are still economic injury disaster loan, EIDL loans available for the agricultural industry only at this point. Okay. So those have closed for all other areas. But agricultural businesses are encouraged to connect on the economic injury disaster loans. The Small Business Development Center at SUNY Geneseo is a fantastic resource to turn to as you're looking at those funding opportunities. And there are also still funds available through the Paycheck Protection Plan. So we heard early on how quickly that closed down and access to that closed down. Round 2, there was additional funds available through there. We encourage businesses to reach out to your local lender. The follow-up question to that was, I haven't been able to successfully complete an application for the P3 or the Paycheck Protection Program. So again, I encourage you to reach out to your local lender, your banker. If they are no longer accepting applications, pick up the phone and call the next banker. Call the next banker and the next banker in line until you're able to connect with. There are local lenders that are still accepting applications, and we encourage you to continue down that path. It does provide some really great opportunities to recoup some of your business losses as we're looking at getting to the other side of this.
Yep. And we are evaluating options, obviously, with the federal government trying to get more money into the county fold. There's a lot of, frankly, controversy about the stimulus spending. I won't shy away from it. And the next round is a round that the states are very much pushing for state funds. Included as part of that would be county funds, and included already are some funds that have have gotten to counties that are eventually monies that could be redistributed back into the community via some vehicles that already exist through the Community Development Block Grant Program, Community Services Block Grant Program, and others. So there will be opportunities down the line for some additional funding streams for businesses, nonprofits, and things like that that were entities like that that were hit hard by this crisis. Just time for a couple of more questions here, so we will end with a couple, and the first is from Bill. And Bill says, we have some of the most beautiful main streets in the state. We agree with Bill. How can I help our local Main Street businesses survive?
Sure. That's right in our wheelhouse, because pre-pandemic, we were encouraging you to do that. And during the pandemic and post-pandemic, the Chamber has actually helped to create some ways that you can be doing this, even though you can't be walking into the storefronts. Our main streets are beautiful. Beyond our main streets, there are so many small businesses throughout Livingston County that right now need your help. They need your help in order to survive this, in order to be here on the other side. At the Chamber, we use the hashtag support small, support all. Businesses in Livingston County need your purchases these days, from your mechanics to your restaurants to your retail locations, service businesses, you name it, they all need your support. So even though you cannot go directly into those some of those locations, the Chamber has actually set up an e-commerce site with access to over 70 businesses right now that you can purchase gift certificates to. You can purchase gift certificates to 5 different places for 5 different amounts, all within one transaction. This is a great way to drive money back into the hands of folks that right now are not seeing money come through their doors. This is a leg up for them. Right now, we have put out over $3,500 into the hands of small businesses in the past 3 weeks. This is great. Mother's Day is Sunday. If you get your orders in today, we can have them in the mailbox on Saturday, and you can still surprise mom. Dads, just a reminder, the kids aren't coming home with projects from school this year, so moms need a little extra special attention now. So I encourage you to get them a gift certificate. The shop is up and line and running. We are also launching a retail list that does include links to businesses that have online shops themselves, so that you can go on and go shopping online. If one thing that has come of this is businesses in Livingston County, retail operations that were not online before, many of them are online now. Yeah. So that's a great opportunity to place your orders online and support those local businesses here in Livingston County.
Yeah, it's a great point. There was even just 2 weeks ago, and I'm sure it's grown since then, there was another 10 or 15 just Main Street proprietors who did not have much of a online presence that through this crisis now do have an online e-commerce platform, showing you that, look, if you didn't think they had it before, check again, because there's probably 15 or 30 businesses in this county just on Main Street alone that have an e-commerce platform that did not before. So again, back to the business support. This is about business. We're going to wrap up here, but this talk was about businesses and about reopening the economy. So again, let's end with some commentary on business. Business has been impacted. They've had to do layoffs. They've had to do temporary closures of operations. They are worried, rightly so, about the concern of what happens afterwards. Where do I fit in all the phases? Please know where we sit in Livingston County, both from government and from that organization that represents business. We're on the same page as far as trying to get you back online in your business as soon as practical, possible, and in the interest of public health and how it aligns with public health. So we are on the same page. We're on your team in that regard. We're doing everything in our power to represent you and your interests at the regional level. And we have myself on that. We have Laura in that. We have Matt Cole from Commodity Resource Corporation representing. We have Denise Battles, President Battles at SUNY Geneseo. We have Bill Bacon in the Economic Development Office. We have all these people that are the Board of Supervisors that are all sort of pushing for the business impact to be considered as far as any reopening goes, right? So we're all on that page. We're working together. We're pushing that rock up together up that same hill. And secondly, please know that the reopening plan will be on a regional basis. It will be imperfect. And as soon as it comes out, it's going to have holes in it for somebody. It's going to disenfranchise someone and make someone happy. Further disenfranchise someone, I guess, but make someone very happy. And in turn, we just have to know that going in and know it's going to tick some people off and make some people happy, get some people back a little bit sooner than others. We're just going to have to work through that, again, as a team, as one Livingston, as working together. So know that we will put forward a plan that's aggressive, but is also in line with all the public health standards. We won't be able to move one piece of a second phase if we don't meet these standards that are laid out, the 7 standards. If we're short on 1 or 2 or more, we're not going to be able to push onto that second standard. So do your part. Continue to practice the social distancing. Wear a mask. We were wearing masks all day today. We're just not wearing them so you can see us talk and hear us talk. But we will when we're done with this. So we appreciate all you're doing. We appreciate you tuning in today. This will be available in a video format to watch later on. With that, Laura, do you have any closing comments you'd like to relay?
I guess in my closing, I would just like to address the question that somebody submitted, that they said, I am a small business. What can I do to prepare for the new normal? And if you could take this time, as we mentioned earlier, to be working within your business to formulate your internal plan, face masks, personal protective equipment, hand sanitizing availability to your employees and customers, and social distancing plans, as well as facility disinfecting protocols. But I would also recommend that you take this time to consider changes and pivoting your business into new potential operations. So does that mean, online sales with curb pickups? Does that mean shifting business operation schedules so as to accommodate social distancing with your employees and the general public? Each of these items are going to be specific to each individual business, but during this time, take the time. I was at a conference 2009, so post 2008 economic downturn, and there was a quote shared, and the girls in the office can attest. I have had this quote next to my desk since then, and I feel that it applies to today as well. It says, the economy isn't down, it's different, and how are you going to operate in this different economy? So, as small business owners, and this I'm speaking directly to the small business owners, the specifics of this different economy are still evolving. But as a small business owner, you are nimble, you are brave, and you know your business and customers better than anyone else. So take this time, role play, and strategize all different angles, because you will be continually challenged now and in the future, and will need to still pivot in this new economy. So, take those time. We're offering seminars, as Ian said, online seminars, sessions. Utilize those. Utilize every resource at your disposal as a small business owner, which you always have, and that's what makes you the small business owner that you are. And we will continue to push information out to small businesses throughout Livingston County. We are here. We are a phone call and an email away. Our building closed on March 12th. But our staff has been operational fully since then, working remotely, and we are here to be your assistance during this time. But Ian, thank you very much for this opportunity to be a part of this. The businesses in Livingston County are our backbone, and the support from the county as businesses are trying to navigate all of this is greatly appreciated. The response, again, you guys are a phone call and an email away, and you're so responsive. And that's critical and appreciated at this time. Well,
thank you. And likewise, if we didn't have the chamber here to help represent the interests of the businesses and to advocate and to position and to connect, we would not be in the position that we're in right now. So, so to close, again, to wrap up, resources, livingstoncounty.us, Livingston County Chamber, look those up, get there. Let us know what you need. Again, phone call, email away. We are operational. A lot of us are remote. A lot of us are in the building, but we are available. And to recap on the reopening, ideally, an ideal situation, the best case scenario is the Livingston County, as part of the Finger Lakes region, meets the standards necessary to commence the first phase of a reopening. That would be starting potentially on the 15th of May. That next phase is, well, what's in that phase is to be determined as much as possible, right? We want as many things as possible to roll on within the confines of what represents proper public health these days. And then phase 2, again, is predicated on how things are going in phase 1. Are we continuing to check the boxes on those 7 benchmarks? If we are, we move into phase 2 and then beyond. So what is in each phase? When does each phase start? Is to be determined in this regional plan. We will be submitting our ideas today or tomorrow to Bob Duffy on that. And when and if we move on to phase 2, if we get to a phase 1 here shortly, is again entirely determined by how things are going within that first 2-week stretch. So I hope that's clear to everybody. That's as much as we can relay with as much specificity as we can relay. Again, we took up an hour of your time here. We appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. Any questions later on, let us know. On behalf of Livingston County, I thank you.
On behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, we thank you as well.
All right. Have a good rest of the day, and thank you, and stay well, and stay healthy, and stay positive.